Hello guys, welcome back to another tutorial. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to create a flying through a bridge sort of an animation using Google Earth Studio, as you saw at the beginning of this video. Now, once you master the art of doing this, you will be able to tweak the effect to a number of different styles, and even you'll be able to create effects like flying a camera through buildings, just like what we have seen in movies like Spider-Man. So as you saw in the title of this video, the tool that we're going to use to create this animation is Google Earth Studio. And just a few days ago, I posted an extremely detailed, beginner-friendly video about Google Earth Studio. And if you would like to learn most of the bells and whistles that come with Google Earth Studio, I would really recommend that you guys actually watch that video, and the link to that is appearing right now in the top right corner of the screen. And in this video, I'm going to specifically discuss this effect, which is quite equivalent to you flying your camera through Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So without further ado, let's jump in and get started with the tutorial. Alright guys, so as you know, if you want to use Google Earth Studio, it's mandatory that you have a Google account, which means that you're going to have to use your Gmail account to basically sign up, and the approval granting process might take typically about 1 day if you're actually doing this for the very first time. But if you have already configured that sort of things, then you can directly dive in and get started with the project. So I'm using Chrome browser, and I have already headed over to earth.google.com/studio. And this is the interface that you get when you try to set up your project. So we have to actually give a name to get started. I'm just going to name this as Fly Through Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm going to select Earth from here. The dimensions, I'm actually going to retain these full HD dimensions, which is 1920 by 1080. And my frames per second, it's going to be 30. And over here, the duration, I'm actually going to set the duration to be just about 30 seconds because it's not going to be that long in terms of its duration. And once you have configured these settings, we can just simply go ahead and hit start. And if you actually haven't done a project like this, then most likely the chances are your viewport layout is actually going to look something like this. However, I'm actually going to split this into two parts. And on the right side, I would like to see the camera. And on the left side, I would like to see sort of a top view so that I can see things like the path along which my camera moves and all that good stuff. So when it comes to the interface, it's actually quite simple. Right over here, we have the main menu. You have the search box where you could just directly type in the location that you'd like to work in, and it'll zoom you right into that location. And over here, we have these playback tools, and we have the timeline right over here, and we will also be making use of a couple of attributes, which you can see right over here. So since my location of interest for this tutorial is going to be Golden Gate Bridge, I'm just going to go ahead and type Golden Gate Bridge right over here. And as you can see, I get the first response, that's the correct one. So if I click on that, you can see that it immediately zoomed me into the correct location, which is the Golden Gate Bridge. Now you can use your mouse to actually pan this around, and if I think we definitely want to tilt this view because only then we would be able to actually see the 3D bridge in this manner. And basically the effect that you guys saw at the beginning of this video is me sort of taking the camera along this path and basically flying through this bridge. And if you don't have much prior experience in using Google Earth Studio, then you might actually find certain things to be a bit more overwhelming, but I will try to simplify the tutorial as much as possible so you won't really get overwhelmed and you would be able to actually replicate what I'm trying to do. Not necessarily for Golden Gate Bridge, but maybe for another location, and you can actually apply the same principles if you want to sort of fly your camera through maybe a set of buildings, things like that. So the first thing that I have to do is, well, right over here, you can see that we have our timeline, which is extending from 0 seconds all the way until 30 seconds. So once you have gotten that down correctly, what we have to do is we have to sort of adjust our camera view to a position that we can consider as the starting position. So I'm actually trying to sort of get started with a position like this with a bit of a higher altitude, and eventually I will drop down to the level of the Golden Gate Bridge, and then I will be flying through the bridge. That's basically what I have in mind. And yeah, I feel like this would be a good starting position. So just position the mid part of the bridge somewhere on the center of the frame. And in order to lock these settings, So when I say these settings, I'm actually referring to the camera position, which is given by the longitude, latitude, and the altitude. Quite important. You can see that right now I'm actually at an altitude of about 20 kilometers above the ground level. Well, it's actually supposed to be above the mean sea level. And also the camera rotation. So if I do actually some slight movements, you will see that all those parameters actually will change. So once you have the correct position of your camera right at the center of your screen, the next thing that you need to do is you kind of have to lock it down. So the way to lock it down would be to use this keyframe all attributes button. And what that's going to do is that's basically going to sort of solidify that these particular parameters are the parameters that's supposed to describe the view that we are seeing right over here at 0 seconds. And right around 15 seconds, I think I would like to get my camera all the way to the end of the bridge, somewhere over here. So I'm just going to use my mouse scroll wheel in order to tilt the view and go forward just a little bit and make sure that right around 15 seconds I end up reaching somewhere around this position. And after that, I'm going to lock that down as well by simply pressing keyframe all attributes. And now if you hit the play button, you will see that I'm actually moving well linearly from 0 seconds all the way until about 15 seconds until I reach the target that I specified. However, there are actually a number of improvements to be made. And if you would like to check the movement path of the camera, you can actually check it from here. Well, you can either zoom into this dot right over here, or what you can do is you can just select fit all paths to view. And right here you can see how that path actually looks. And if I'm being completely honest, I feel like I'm actually traveling a bit too long over this stretch of the land. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move my starting position of the camera to be a bit more closer to the Golden Gate Bridge. And with the current setting, this is how it would look if I were to kind of play it back. And as you can see, it's not actually still looking quite promising, because still we haven't set something quite important when it comes to defining the angle of our camera, which is the camera target. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to specify that I would like my camera to always point towards this particular area. And we define such an instruction to Google Earth Studio by simply using an attribute called camera targets. So if you go to add attributes, you will actually see a special attribute called camera target, but it's always easier to actually do it directly from this camera view simply by right clicking over here, and you can set the camera target to be like this. So now you will see that this sort of an icon actually appears, which means that now no matter where my camera moves, it's trying to, or it's actually definitely trying to look into this direction. Doesn't really matter whether my path is actually a straight path or whether it involves a number of different curves. At all times, my camera will be directed towards this particular point. So that's the benefit of having this added attribute called camera target. And now if I play it back, you can see that as I'm dropping down to the level of Golden Gate Bridge, I'm constantly looking towards that particular camera target, which is exactly what I would like to have. All right. And now you can see that when we lose altitude starting from this point all the way until this point, we're kind of losing altitude in a linear way. And that can actually be seen if you try to go to this one of these views. Either you can go with east or you can go with west. You can see that this was my starting point and this is my camera target, and I'm actually dropping my altitude in a sort of a linear way. However, I would like to maybe add an adjustment point to somewhere over here and make sure that I actually drop to the level of Golden Gate Bridge just within a few meters from my starting point, and then do most of my lateral traveling at the level of the Golden Gate Bridge. So, I mean, there are actually multiple ways of doing that. One of the easiest ways that I actually have found in order to do that would be to sort of get my slider to somewhere over here. And what I can do is I can actually zoom in and make sure that I place my camera at the level where I would like to be. So let's say if I would like to be at this sort of a level, since our ultimate objective would be to sort of fly through the Golden Gate Bridge, it can be a bit tricky when it comes to getting the camera position adjusted. I think something like this would be quite nice. And once I get that configured, that means at this particular point in my slider, I would like for my camera to immediately drop down to a lower altitude and position towards my camera target. And again, as I told you guys, the easiest way to lock these parameters down would be to simply hit this keyframe all attributes button and it'll lock it down for us. And you can actually see the results simply by playing this back. Yeah, just like this. And for some reason, if you feel like the speed at which you're dropping down is actually a bit too much, what you can do is you can select all the keyframes corresponding to your second set of keyframes, and you can actually slightly move this towards the right side of your timeline. And now if you check how it looks, yeah, now you can see that it's working perfectly as we expected. However, you can see that we are not actually flying through the Golden Gate Bridge. We're actually going a bit out of the line that we're supposed to be at. But that's not an issue at all, because all we have to do is just go head over here and make sure that we get this particular path to match this line of the bridge, which is shown here in this map in yellow color. So all you have to do is just try to find a way to sort of match this or align this white color path over this yellow color line. And at the same time, I do notice that there has been some sort of a distortion right over here. We are not really supposed to have this kind of a bend in the path right over here. So yeah, I will try to adjust it like that as well. And now you can see that the path almost perfectly lies on top of the line of the bridge. However, if you need more controls, you can always add extra keyframes. Let's say somewhere over here, if you would need some handle to adjust the position. For example, let's say when you have a point right in the middle, you can actually do further adjustments to the path. But in this case, you can see that it's almost actually there. And now let's play this back and see what we get. Yeah, as you can see, there's some issue with the altitude because at some point you can see that we are actually heading under the bridge, which is not supposed to happen. So there's actually an easy way to correct that. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of this set of keyframes. And maybe I could actually get rid of this set of keyframes as well. And when I drop down to the ground level, I'm just going to make sure that I'm not dropping all the way to the level of the road, but instead I think I'll try to maintain an altitude something like this. And after that, just add a set of keyframes. And let's check how this looks. Alright, after that, all we have to do is just make sure that we don't really get this bend which is appearing for some reason. And make sure that we're actually traveling or we're moving just along this yellow color line. Yeah, which almost looks perfect right now. However, something that I notice is that the movement after we drop down to the level of the ground or level of the road until we reach this point, it's actually happening quite slowly. So I'm just going to speed it up simply by selecting all the keyframes of this last position, and I'm going to drag all of them maybe to a position like this, which can essentially speed up the entire movement. So if I play it back, this is how it's going to look now. Yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to teach you guys. But as a bonus point, I'm also actually going to teach you guys how to add an extra effect where you could take the camera and zoom out and maybe go around the bridge to get a nice shot. So I'm just going to make sure that my camera holds this position for maybe for about a second or so. So all you have to do is just move your slider slightly to the right side and add another set of keyframes. So that means you will actually kind of copy all the attributes that you had at this position towards this position. That means you're basically going to get a still image for about a second. And after that, maybe around somewhere over here, I would like to zoom out. And maybe have a view something like this. However, I'm not going to zoom out directly from this position to here, but instead I'm actually going to take my camera around the bridge and bring it over here. So let's fix the final position that we think is suitable enough, which I think would be somewhere over here. And after that we can add another set of keyframes. And as soon as you do that, if you look at the top view, you can see that this straight line is actually the straight line that refers to the movement of the camera from here until here. But as I told you guys, it's quite boring if I were to just move my camera from here until here. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a set of keyframes just for the purpose of getting another handle somewhere over here in the middle of the path. And I'm just going to click once over here, and I will rotate this path in this kind of a manner. And as soon as you do that, you see that you also actually get two handles on the left and the right side of this dot, which you can use to sort of expand and play around with the radius aspect of this path. So the benefit of having this kind of a top view is that I know for a fact that the bridge extends only across this region. So if I want to take my camera sort of around the bridge, then I think it's wise to take the camera in this kind of a path and maybe not go this far from the bridge, because then I think we won't really be able to notice the bridge. So I'm just trying to get close to the bridge like this. And at the same time, I'm also going to make use of these handles to ensure that I retain that smooth movement of the camera rather than having any sharp turns. And well, the good thing is you can always play back and see whether it worked according to your expectation or not. So let's see how the camera moves now. So you can see that we're actually backing up again and we're trying to go around the bridge. Yeah, as you can see, it actually worked almost perfectly according to my expectations. And as the final shot, I'm just going to take my slider all the way to the end of this timeline, and I would like to create my final shot to sort of zoom out from the Golden Gate Bridge, maybe to a level like this. So in doing so, you can see that all I have to do is lock all of these camera position parameters by simply hitting right over here. And at the same time, while doing that, I'm actually instructing the program to sort of switch the camera target from here to be here. So I'm also actually going to right click over here and now set the new camera target. So when it comes to the final part of our animation, our camera will be directed towards this direction instead of actually the camera being directed towards this point right over here, which was our initial camera target. So what we can do is now go back and check whether the animation worked in the way that we expected it to play out. And as you can see over here, there is actually a bit of a bend in the path. I'm not sure whether that will actually create some sort of a weird effect or not, but let's see. If it does, then we always have the possibility of sort of adjusting the handle. Yeah, now you can see that the camera target is linearly changing towards the right side of the bridge from this view. And it's no longer trying to focus at this point, but now it's actually trying to focus around this point. And by the time we reach 30 seconds, our camera target fully goes to this point, and with that we end up in a zoomed out view like this to finish our animation. So guys, I think that's about it. I hope the tutorial was clear for you guys. I think it was not that complex, especially creating the flying through the bridge effect. And the good thing is that once you master this concept, you would be able to actually apply this to a number of different other scenarios, especially as I told you guys at the beginning of this video. If you would like to fly through a street with huge buildings, just like what we have seen in movies, especially in movies like Spider-Man, you can definitely try out and see whether you can replicate that sort of an effect using Google Earth Studio or not. And finally, what we have to do is, in order to create a video file out of this, all you have to do is just click right over here on render. And I'm going to retain the name Fly Through Golden Gate Bridge. So when it comes to the output, you can actually generate a humongous number of JPEG images and kind of combine all of them together in order to create a video file. Or they have actually given this option to generate a video file directly in .mp4 format, and it's going to be rendered in the cloud. Once it's done, you will actually get a notification from Google Earth Studio saying that your file is ready to be downloaded. And right over here, you can see that we are basically covering all the frames from 0 until 900, and the dimensions, we are going to retain that to be the dimensions of a full HD video, which is 1920 by 1080. And when it comes to Google Earth, when it comes to using Google Earth Studio, it's mandatory that we actually give the attribution. Your only flexibility when it comes to giving the attribution is that you can select the position where you're going to place this thing. You can either go with one of these preset options. For example, top center will bring it right over here. Or if you would like to just drag this and maybe drop it to a location or a place of your preference, you can do that as well. And that's pretty much it, guys. After that, you can just click submit. It's going to take a while, especially if the file is a bit heavy. It's going to take a while. And once everything is done, you're going to be notified by Google Earth Studio. There will be a notification that will appear right over here saying that your file is ready to be downloaded. And you can actually check that by going into animation and go to cloud renders. And right over here, you can see the Fly Through Golden Gate Bridge animation, which is currently queued. So once it's done, the status of it will get changed to something like delivered. So we're going to have to wait until that happens. So I'll get back to you guys as soon as that happens. And once the status gets changed to delivered, what you can do is you can just click right over here and download this video, which is this video right over here. And if you open this up using one of the media players, now you would be able to see the final product, which looks actually quite amazing compared to what we saw before in the editor, because now this is the rendered product. And if you would like to add a bit of a cinematic touch to this video, what you can do is you can actually add a background music to make things much more interesting, like what I have done, like what you actually heard at the beginning of this video. Alright guys, so that's about it for this tutorial. If you do have any questions, add a comment down below, and I hope the steps were clear for you guys. And if you guys are not really able to replicate these steps in your very first go, don't be discouraged. Usually it takes a couple of tries to actually make sure that you get the hang of it. So don't blame yourself and give enough time for you to actually get the hang of it, which is going to actually take a couple of tries definitely. So with that, we're going to wrap up this tutorial. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, you know exactly what to do. You can stay up to date and you will be notified immediately as soon as we publish a new video if you subscribe. And if you did like the tutorial, show your support by hitting that like button as well. And thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you guys again with another tutorial.